Hey, hey, hey! As Yogi Bear would say, what's going on, gang? Nate on the Stone here. Welcome back to my channel and to episode number 88 of the Rolling Stone. Doesn't seem quite possible that we're already at 88. Anyway, hope you guys have had a good week. Hope that you're all staying safe as you can, as free as you can, especially this week. If you live in the Midwest or in the East, not so sure on the West Coast or the South, but in the Midwest, like I do for the time being, or the East, we have been reminded this week that winter is not a figment of our imaginations. It is, in fact, an actual season, and she has decided to make her presence known with a vengeance. Where I am actually this week, it hasn't gotten above freezing all this week. In fact, we've had highs about 9, 13, lows -5. I mean, I know several people, some coworkers, people that I interact with, have been complaining about, oh my gosh, it's so cold, oh my gosh, all this snow. And my line of looking at it is that, well, you know, this is actually how winter is supposed to be. I mean, we do still realize that winter is supposed to be snowy and it is supposed to be cold. Unless you live in the deep South or, you know, the Southern California, the Southwest. I mean, winter is supposed to be snowy, and for pretty much this entire hemisphere, it is supposed to be colder than it is in the summertime. But we've just gotten spoiled. But yes, the winds of winter are howling. But you know, for as cold and as chill as they can be, they are far more humane than the winds of ideology, which have been blowing a gale this past week, as is usual. That really actually is the theme, if there is a theme for these Rolling Stone videos. You guys know the drill. There doesn't have to be a quote-unquote theme, and ideology is kind of a cheating theme because you could retroactively look back and say, well, that's the main theme of all these Rolling Stones. But rolling with that, the winds of ideology have been blowing a gale. I know that the big news story this week, the big supposed news story this week is the historical second impeachment of former President Trump. I'm not even going to touch that. It's still going on, gang. I think that it is a pretty foregone conclusion what is going to happen. It looks right now that he isn't going to be impeached. Like, the Senate is not actually going to convict him because 44 Republican senators have already said they're not going to vote to convict because they don't think that they have any jurisdiction over this case, since the question still looming over that whole issue, one of them at least, is how can a former president be impeached? If impeachment is about removing someone from public office, how does that work if the person being impeached has already been removed from said public office? So when the whole thing is said and done, we might have something to say about that. But to get into the meat and potatoes of this week's edition, the first story has to do with Gina Carano, who went from MMA woman fighter to much beloved secondary supporting character on a very popular show, to now being the face of the quote-unquote conservative resistance, all A, B, and C. You probably have heard of Gina Carano because she played Cara Dune in the very popular Disney Plus show The Mandalorian, which a lot of people have said is the one bright spot in Star Wars entertainment today, after those abysmal, abominable sequels that people were forced to endure. Well, they weren't forced to endure. You didn't have to watch them. I certainly didn't. I haven't seen a single one of those sequels, but I'm very old school in that. For me, Star Wars is the original trilogy. Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and then that's it. Maybe if I'm in a funny mood, maybe I'll pop in one of the prequels. more than likely just to watch Christopher Lee in the second one, or his name just went right out of my head. Not Ian McDiarmid, but Ewan McGregor, the guy who played Obi-Wan Kenobi. Because they're both actually, Christopher Lee, Ewan McGregor, and even Ian McDiarmid, they're all great in those movies. They are just very talented actors who can make something as horrible as Attack of the Clones at least somewhat enjoyable to watch when they're on the screen, at least. So, haven't seen the sequels, haven't even seen The Mandalorian, to be perfectly honest with you. I haven't even subscribed to Disney Plus. I absolutely refuse, because in my opinion, the Disney company has become a pigsty that Walt would be completely ashamed of if he were alive today, and not just frozen in carbonite so that the executives can keep picking his subconscious for ideas that then they can pervert into money-making schemes by selling them to the Chinese, which is totally true. So, Gina Carano, her character, Cara Dune, was very popular in The Mandalorian, but that all came to a crash this week when she was summarily fired by Lucasfilms and by Disney Plus. And the reason for this was, you guys know the drill, it was a social media post. A social media post. In this case, not something that she said on Twitter, but something that she had actually put on Instagram. And in this Instagram post, she did actually something rather gutsy. She compared conservatives in America to Jews in the Holocaust. This is actually what she said. Jews were beaten in the streets not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? That's actually a very apropos question, particularly right now where we see example after example after example of the left attempting, in many cases becoming more and more successful at it, attempting to dehumanize anyone who is not part of their tribe. Just this past week, there was an opinion piece in the LA Times about a woman who legitimately was wondering what her response should be after her Trump-supporting neighbors, Trumpites as she called them, plowed her driveway from snow. And she was actually like, when people like this actually plow my driveway, it's harder for me to think that they are the scum of the earth. The entire piece, the very fact that an act of neighborliness, and of course she was thinking, there must be some sort of dark, diabolical reason why they were trying to be friendly towards me, and the only reason, I will accept their goodwill, but it's going to take more than just plowing my driveway for us to be neighbors again. These people have to basically admit that they supported a dictator, aka Donald Trump. So in other words, acts of neighborliness don't mean anything anymore in the worldview of the left. And they will only mean something if basically you get on your knees and grovel and beg for mercy for actually supporting a particular political candidate who was, by the by, not a dictator by any stretch of the imagination. To rehash the old line, if Trump was a dictator, then he was the most incompetent, bumbling dictator that the world has ever seen. If that was actually true, he would have made Colonel Klink look like a genius. Okay? He would have made Colonel Klink look like the exemplar Nazi officer. I'm referring, of course, to the character from the old TV show Hogan's Heroes and not an actual Nazi. So don't worry, don't put your hateful messages quite yet in the comment section. So there's that example. You have the example, and that's because that's not the only example, gang. That's not the only example. Far from it. You had Nancy Pelosi, who said after the January 6th riots at the Capitol that the rioters had chosen their whiteness over democracy, thus implying that any person who was white or of Caucasian descent was potentially a domestic terrorist who, at the turn of a dime, could have their fuse lit and they could go on a murderous rampage. So in other words, don't trust those white people. Don't trust your white neighbors. There have been Medium, which is a leftist Valhalla, has been filled with stories like this. There were a couple of headlines this past week saying, no, Joe Biden, white America absolutely is guilty of all the things that the left has been saying. There was another headline from Medium saying that it's not just the Republican Party that's the problem, it's the people who vote for the Republican Party that are the problem. And then you have had very influential people actually come out and say that the Republican Party is actually a domestic terrorist organization. Well, the Republican Party, last I looked, did not comprise just of public officials who ran under the moniker of Republican. It consisted of everyone who actually registers as a Republican or who claims to be part of the Republican Party. So this actual dehumanization is happening as we speak on the left. And Gina Carano, to her credit, she actually just made an actual legitimate and valid historical comparison. That's all that she did. But for that, she was fired. And I find it very, very funny the reason why she was fired. A spokesperson for Lucasfilms, meaning that this was also a spokesperson for Disney Plus, said her social media posts denigrating people based on their cultural and religious identities are abhorrent and unacceptable. Now that's some pretty major Orwellian reimagining going on there, because comparing people today to Jews in the Holocaust, you might think that's hyperbolic, even though it's not really. I mean, we're even seeing people now being arrested, thrown in jail. Remember, we did a whole video last week about Doug Mackey, the poor schlub, the 31-year-old conservative journalist in Florida who, for the crime of posting social media posts onto Twitter and Facebook, was arrested by the FBI because he was quote-unquote trying to spread disinformation during a presidential election. So we can't even say that, well, you know, that comparison is kind of hyperbolic because nobody is being thrown into jail. Yeah, Doug Mackey would like to raise his hand in mild objection to that claim. But even then, if it was a hyperbolic comparison, Gina Carano was not denigrating people for being Jewish. She wasn't denigrating them for their cultural, religious identities. If you want to see cultural and religious denigration, look no further than, for example, Louis Farrakhan. Louis Farrakhan, who is the head of the Nation of Islam, which is a black supremacist group, who has actually compared, no, actually not even that. He has blamed Jews for slavery, for the antebellum plantation culture of the South. He's blamed Jews for Jim Crow. He has said that Jews wield all the power in the world today. Okay, those are some pretty big accusation. I mean, that's denigrating people based on their religious and cultural identity, quote unquote. But no one really touches Louis Farrakhan, and we're going to have some more to say about Louis Farrakhan in the next video, so hold on to your hats. Here was another example of someone on the left denigrating people for their religious and cultural identities. Back in 2018, you had a D.C. councilman, Trayon White Sr., who, after a big snowstorm in D.C., publicly said that the Rothschilds control the weather. Okay, that has been conveniently forgotten. Last week, the big story was that Marjorie Taylor Greene, who insinuated that there was a giant Jewish space laser up there, up somewhere among the stars, and that it was responsible for all those California wildfires. No, and for that, she was made the absolute worst person in the world. No one remembered that same year, Trayon White, who is for matter of public record, a black registered Democrat who, at the time in 2018, was serving as councilman for Washington, D.C.'s 8th Ward, and who holds that same position still today, said that the Rothschilds, big, powerful, rich Jewish family in England during the 19th century, the Rothschilds today control the weather. Yeah, and that was actually reported in the Washington Post. That wasn't just something that some conservative blogger made up in the ether of the internet. No. A leftist media hub, the Washington Post, reported on that story. So there ain't no getting around that. So the very fact, this was all an Orwellian attempt. And I keep using that word a lot. I'm going to have to tone back on that. This was all an Orwellian attempt by the left to get rid of Gina Carano because she had the audacity to actually tell the truth. She had the audacity to actually make a valid comparison where she compared the supposed villains today, conservatives, who have been compared to Nazis, fascists, authoritarians, Klansmen, resurrected Confederates, basically every single villain in history they've been compared to, we've been compared to. Because she had the gall to actually say, hey, this is similar to what the Nazis were doing way back when, and this is how you get the Holocaust, by dehumanizing people, making them the absolute scum of the universe. For that, she was fired because it went against the narrative. Because she actually swam against the current, she was crushed. And that is actually the message. Again, it was another raw demonstration of power. Even someone as popular as Gina Carano can be instantly vaporized by the left. Now, there is an addendum to this story that actually just happened today as of this recording, because Gina Carano just announced today, again, I'm recording this on Friday, February 12th. Happy Abraham Lincoln's birthday, everyone. She announced, as of this recording, February 12th, meaning the day after Lucasfilms similarly guillotined her, that she was going to write, produce, direct, and star, I believe, in a movie that the Wunderkind, Ben Shapiro's website, The Daily Wire, was then going to distribute to all of its subscribers. This would actually be the second movie that they have done, actually. They did one, what was it? Run, Hide, Hunt, I think. I think that that's what the name of that movie was, Run, Hide, Hunt, which was about it's a fictional account of a school shooting. A bunch of people start hunting these students during, I think, a school prom, and the main character, who's a girl, has to start, of course, running, hiding from them, and then fighting back. Maybe it was Run, Hide, Fight. I think that was it. Not Run, Hide, Hunt, but Run, Hide, Fight. So that was the Daily Wire's first movie. They didn't actually make it. They just distributed it. They bought the distribution rights to it, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. And now Gina Carano has paired with the Daily Wire so that she can make her own movie. Now, I'm very happy for Gina Carano. I'm very, very happy for her that she was able to make lemonade out of lemons, and that she wasn't just going off into this good night, that she was proactive. Although there must have been feelers put out by the Daily Wire, I'm thinking, immediately after this happened. They scooped her up just as quick as they could. My contention, however, with this addendum, with this supposedly happy ending, is something that Gina Carano said. She said, They can't cancel us if we don't let them. Now, I understand the spirit behind that. I understand that completely. But my beef with that is this, and let me try to explain this as well as I can, gang. My beef with what she said, they can't cancel us if we don't let them, is this. Gina Carano got this opportunity with the Daily Wire. In other words, she was able to survive the left's cancellation because she already had brand recognition. Even before she was co-starring in The Mandalorian, people knew, in a sense, who she was. She had been an MMA fighter, a very successful run, compiling a 7-1 record, I believe. 7 wins and 1 defeat, I believe, which is very impressive. And then she had been in a couple of movies, mainstream movies, Haywire. I think she was in the first Deadpool movie, too, with Ryan Reynolds. So she wasn't an unknown when The Mandalorian started streaming on Disney+, but The Mandalorian just sort of shot her into the upper atmosphere because it was a very popular show, and then she was playing very well, a very well-written character that audiences, very quickly fell in love with. So because of that, she was in a very unique position. She already had not only brand recognition, but she also had some clout. She was known to be an actress. She was known to be, as well, a bankable actress. And because of that, the Daily Wire, which is starting to put its toes into the culture by making movies just for their subscribers right now, FYI, they were able to actually make a deal with her in order for her to survive the left's cancellation. But here's my thing. What about the people who don't have that clout, who don't have that brand name recognition like she does? And again, I'm not blaming her for this. I'm not saying that it's not fair that she has it and other people don't. But this is, I think, a question that the right is going to have to grapple with. For example, go back to the aforementioned Doug Mackey, a guy whose only crime was posting social media memes, I should say memes onto social media during the 2016 election. Nobody still knows who that is. Honestly, if you go up to someone and ask who is Doug Mackey, the reaction, I would guarantee you, 9 out of 10 times is going to be, huh? Because that story was buried. No one even knows who he is still. Or, take for example, the 2 teachers from Allentown, Pennsylvania, who are now being investigated by their school district for the crime of attending the Trump rally in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. Now, to be clear, they were not anywhere near the Capitol. They did not participate in the riots. I think that their group was like a mile away by the Washington Memorial, the Washington Monument. It doesn't matter. For the very fact of exercising their rights of free speech and free assembly, their school district is now investigating them. They very well could lose their jobs. Last summer, we had the story about the principal, a grade school principal in Vermont, who, because she posted a Facebook post on her own private Facebook page where she said, I support Black Lives Matter. I'm all for Black Lives Matter. Of course, Black Lives Matter. But I don't know. Rioting, burning, looting, that might be taking that a step too far. She was fired. She was fired. Not for saying, I hate Black Lives Matter. They're thugs in sheep's clothing. But she was fired simply for not backing them all the way as the ideology demanded. She might never be able to work again. What are we going to do about these people? And the solution that I have come up with, just off the top of my head, might be one that is going to seem distasteful to conservatives because it's going to have to require them. It's going to require them to actually pull back on their bootstrap mentality, by which I mean their, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You can do anything you set your mind to, etc., etc., etc. Now, I am not saying that you shouldn't try to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I am not saying that you should wait and let other people, try to achieve your dreams for you or carry you to the finish line of whatever race that you yourself are running, whether that's personally, professionally, whatever. I do not think that there is any substitute for hard work. However, having said that, the right has taken it to an unhealthy level, I would think. So now, there is not, let me put it like this. There is really no system of support on the right. If someone gets canceled, if something happens to somebody, yeah, we'll tweet about it, we'll blog about it, we'll make videos about it, and we'll still say, oh, we'll start maybe a GoFundMe or something like that. But that's about the limit of what we will do. We do not actually have networks of support to help people like Doug Mackey, like those teachers in Pennsylvania, like that principal in Vermont, people who have absolutely no social, culture, or political power, who are therefore helpless when the left does cancel them. And even worse than canceling, fires them from their job or puts them in such a position that they're scared to death to actually exercise their rights of assembly and freedom in a lawful manner because, the next time they do, they really could be fired. And then, of course, you've got, everyone knows who you are, and so, the mob might come up at your door at 3 a.m. and start yelling at you with a megaphone. Maybe it doesn't even have to be at 3 a.m. It could be in the middle of the afternoon. And as we also saw last summer, my point is, yeah, they can't cancel us if we don't let them. But if we simply pay attention to the people who are well-connected, to the people who already have name brand recognition and who therefore can utilize that to combat the left's cancellation, we're not going to win this fight because tens of thousands upon tens of thousands upon tens of thousands of ordinary everyday people are still going to be canceled. And unless we're going to say that people like Gina Carano are more valuable and therefore are worth more than these thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of nameless people who are just trying to provide for themselves and provide for their family while at the same time participate in the public square, then we're not going to win this fight. And maybe, if that's going to be the mentality, then maybe we shouldn't win that fight. Because at that point, then we're saying, like the left, well, all people are equal, but some people are more equal than others because they're more valuable than others. So again, I'm not upset that Gina Carano managed to wrangle this sweet deal with the Daily Wire, but I do think that if we are going to take her battle cry, as it were, seriously, then the right, particularly the estabulary right, is really going to have to rethink how they can help just the common man during these soft totalitarian years. That is story number one.